All right, now we're ready to write our first JavaScript code. In order to write JavaScript code here, we need a script element. There are two places where we can add a script element. We can add that here in the head section or in the body section. The best practice is to put the script element at the end of the body section after all the existing elements. So here after H1, I'm going to type script and press tab. This is our script element. Now, why did I say that as a best practice, you should put the script element here? Well, there are two reasons for that. One reason is that the browser parses this file from top to bottom. So if you put the script element here in the head section, you might have a lot of JavaScript code there. So your browser may get busy parsing and executing that JavaScript code, and it won't be able to render the content of the page. So this will create a bad user experience. Your user looks at your web page, it's white or blank, while your browser is busy parsing and executing your JavaScript code. So that's reason one. The second reason is that almost always the code that we have in between script elements needs to talk to the elements on this web page. For example, we may want to show or hide some elements. So by adding the code here at the end of the body section, we'll be confident that all these elements are rendered by the browser. Now, there are exceptions to this rule. Sometimes you're using third-party code that has to be placed in the head section. But these are exceptions. As I told you before, as a best practice, you should add your JavaScript code at the end of the body section. Now here, we're going to write the same code that you wrote in the last lecture. Console.log hello world. But we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail. What we have here is a statement. A statement is a piece of code that expresses an action to be carried out. In this case, we want to log a message on the console. All statements in JavaScript should be terminated by a semicolon. What we have here in between single quotes is called a string. A string is a sequence of characters. Now in JavaScript, we also have this notation. We can add two slashes, and this represents a comment. So here we can add some description to our code, and this description is ignored by the JavaScript engine. It's not executed. It's purely for documenting the code when you want to explain to other developers why you have written this code this way. You don't want to explain what the code does because that should be clear in the code itself. So here I don't want to write something like logging something on the console. That's so obvious in the code, right? Instead, we want to explain whys and hows. So for this demo, I'm just going to add a simple comment. This is my first JavaScript code. Now save the changes. Back in the browser, we need to bring the console back up. So right click somewhere and go to inspect, or alternatively, you can use a shortcut that is Alt Command and I on Mac or Alt Control I on Windows. That brings up the console tab. If the console tab is not immediately visible, make sure to select it here. And here you can see the hello world message.